Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Large Blast podcast, best Warhammer 40,000 podcast around. I'm your host, Stoney, and I'm joined, as always, by Matt.
Who's Rin?
And Welshie.
Vroom, 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 vroom.
And you know us, we're the podcast that likes to get deep into Warhammer lore, and I bet you've never heard of Space Marines, because that's what we're doing today. But before we get into that, we like to get things kicked off with a little something we call Hobbies Goings On, where we have a look at the goings on that's been happening in the hosts' hobbies' lives. So let's go with Welshie first this time, because Matt, you've had some disappointing hobby progress in the last couple of episodes. So Welshie, let's see what you've got.
Well, Stoney, you'll be pleased to know that for the past few episodes, I've been talking about starting painting your Inquisition-esque warband, and I have started. They are sprayed. I've base coated them a little bit. I'm going full Blanchitsu style, so they're all sprayed.
Did you decide
like
on? I remember in the last couple of episodes you said you're going to do a couple of colours, like three or four colours. Did you make a decision upon that?
Yeah, red, brown, yellow, basically.
Oh, nice.
The Janzit, the Jits, whatever it is, the Jitsu fucking palette. That's perfect.
Jitsu 3. Yeah. Whether I stick to just 3 paints or I'm allowed to use all my paints within those shades, I'm not sure yet. I might do a little bit of metallic touch-ups, but okay. I'm starting like they're going to be kind of dirty, those kind of dirty beige, brown washed robes that you see in all the Blanchitsu stuff with some like bright 90s kind of reds and stuff on them. I'm going to go with the heads you've designed that are kind of like weird pyramid heads. I'm going for kind of bright red on them and stuff. So yeah. Hoping they kind of pop out. Something completely different to the way I normally paint, just as a bit of a challenge. And I'm recording it as I go, so there'll be a short video at some point about it.
Excellent news. Matt, what have you been up to? Bretonians?
Well, I mean, pretty much the same as last time. Not a lot, really. Although I did sit down late last night, and got the urge again to paint. Since the last episode, I've done nothing. But unfortunately, it was too late to really do anything. But I am also painting your collection of 4 figures are being painted over here as well. And that made me think, like, it's probably the first time both Welsh and I are working on the same models at the same time.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
and they were made by me, so it's a real Large Blast podcast collaboration going on.
Yeah.
Don't forget, you can get them from our Colts 3D if you're listening.
If you want to join in the Large Blast podcast collaboration and paint our models at the same time, then get on there and buy those fucking models.
Other than that, that's basically it. So what about you, Stoney?
I'm so close to finishing my Noise Boys. I'm just doing some last minute fucking around that Stoney has become known for in his time model making. And basically I've been, because I wanted to redo their kind of guitar things that they're holding, their kind of sound weapons. I've gone real deep into sound weapon lore recently. I've been down a fucking rabbit hole of that. So I look forward to the video coming out about making these Noise Boys. But like, so I ended up kind of making the end, kind of the head where the tuning forks would be, kind of like a head that's been kind of busted open, and all its like vocal cords have been kind of stretched out over a kind of a sort of a weird thing on the end of the guitar there. And that's been quite fun. But I'll tell you what, though, I've been looking at a lot of pictures of vocal cords and just like weird shit. So that's kind of weird. So that's I've got all of that just in there now in the old head, like random knowledge.
Did you stumble across? There's a woman called Charismatic Voice that does YouTube reviews of singers. She's teamed up with that Will Ramos fella from Lorna Shore and puts a camera down his throat whilst he's singing to see how he does his growls.
You see the little throat bum hole opening and closing, singing at you. Yeah.
Finance, cutting edge technology. Accurate information is the Large Blast podcast news. Hear every episode.
Well, you're just in time, Stoney, actually, with the Noise Boys, because I know we normally have a little intro before the news, but this is directly related to you finishing on time.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just reading about this before we started. This is the new Slanesh detachment thing that came out as like a kind of an FAQ type. You can print your own rules off and show up to the tournament, right? But but this is still like Slanesh.
Fulgrim. They're saying Fulgrim's coming next week, I've heard.
What, next week? They're saying Fulgrim's coming on, mate. Well, it's about time.
No, this is them saying they're not officially in the, so Noise Marines are not officially in the new Chaos Codex, but you can still play them, which essentially means they're building the Emperor's Children Codex. But then in the text right at the end, they were like,
they're still the forgotten god of GW, the shameful one they wheel out at the end. They're always like Nurgle first.
Hide the tits. Hide the tits.
Hide the slippery Slanesh boys.
This was just like when they revealed the Fulgrim model, and it was a roller coaster of an article where I started reading, going, well, okay, if they're not in the Codex must be soon. And then they finished the article with, it's too distant in the future for even Warhammer Community's astropathic choir to detect any signals. So the Codex is coming, just as it's always been coming for years. Yeah. It's got to be the 11th Codex. Surely he's in the 11th box set. That's what we're going to see these.
They're still ashamed of poor old Slanesh and its nipply ways.
Yeah.
We're looking at a picture of Lucius, the Eternal, which that was a metal figure, I'm pretty sure. Like, come on. That figure's the model is great, but that character and that model could be updated.
Do you like Age of Sigmar? Well, fuck you. I'm Games Workshop and I'm going to cut 100 of your models or something like that. A whole bunch of them gone, done, ended. It's over. But at the same time, some new releases as well. They've got new clan rats coming out. A bunch of that shit that's gone. We're going to make new stuff. We're going to resell it to you. If you like the old stuff, you can go fantasy, I guess, or old world, I guess. Whereas now Age of Sigmar is getting new shit again, even though it was all quite new to begin with. I think that Lucius the Eternal model we just talked about is older than the entire Age of Sigmar range.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
There were. I can't remember the models, but there were models that were like 2009 releases that have been axed, which is crazy. It's like Games Workshop just have never been like that. But in 2009 I could have bought a brand new Beastman fantasy army. Then when they got Age of Sigmar, that army would have been useless. Then I would have rebased them. Then they came out in Age of Sigmar, and now the Beastmen are one of the armies that you can no longer play or no longer be supported in Sigmar. But if you rebase them, you can probably now use them in fantasy. But,
it's so ridiculous.
But they're not selling them.
But those are some classic models just gone, like the Beastman ogre thing.
Yeah,
they had that's a great model.
I think so. We're looking at some Skaven on screen on round bases.
Yeah, I think these are the new Skaven because the Skaven are in the trailer for the reboot. So Skaven are back in a big way. These Skaven we're looking at now are the new Skaven
Age of Sigmar.
For Age of Sigmar.
Yeah, they're redoing the whole range, basically. A lot of the scraps are coming from the Skaven range, I hear.
So that's weird. So because they're not in fantasy. They're not going to have a book in fantasy, which is kind of weird.
For the time being.
For now, yeah. Until you have to rebase all of these.
Until you buy this army and then rebase them. I mean, I did, I've said on the podcast before that I thought they would have a Beastmen 40k army. So my first thought was, is that what's happening? But
I mean, we've said Space Skaven many times in our kind of wishful thinking, and these sculpts are really nice. So they're also tiny next to a Sigmarine. I saw like a scale comp, and they don't look any bigger than they used to be. They're just more detailed.
But I think that's really good because they fuck around with the scale. I mean, specifically in Age of Sigmar, stuff is massive in that game. Like that big Chaos Lord or whatever is like enormous, and then to have like this kind of like variation in height of models looks really cool on the battlefield. So if they've shrunk them down, this is one of the few times I'm going to say I'm glad they've shrunk them down. I'm glad they made them harder.
They're rats.
Rats, baby.
It's happened. It's finally happened, guys. We've been usurped as the most dominant sex in the universe. Now girls can be custodies? What?
Oh boy. Like, we're going to be, by the time this goes out, a week after this, we're going to be past the deadline. But my God, the Reddit, the internet has exploded based on this one picture initially posted on Reddit from the Custodes Codex, which refers to a Custodes as a she, and the world went absolutely fucking nuts
Yeah.
for 2 days.
Yeah.
We'll tell what we think about it in a second.
You just
Let's get
literally
the facts
can't.
out.
You literally can't go on any of your Facebook groups, any of your Reddit groups. All that shit is just ruined. Any 40,000 shit at the moment is just ruined by people fucking talking about this. So
Ruined
annoying.
by a type error.
Yeah. Well, let's get the final fact out then. So there's one little passage from the Codex that refers to a Custodes as a she. Everyone lost their minds, and Warhammer official replied to a tweet to someone who said, "Why do you make female Custodes?" They replied, "Since the first of the 10,000 were created, there have always been female custodians." So those are the only two official GW kind of things. One that refers to a Custodes as a she, and then them saying, "They've always been there. We've been gaslighting you this whole time."
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe they
What do we
have.
reckon?
I mean, it kind of makes sense, really, because if the Sisters of Battle are there, then like surely some of them can be Custodes. I don't know. To be honest with you, I take like I really don't give a fuck. Like people can make
Yeah.
any army they want.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure there's already people that have made female Custodes out there already. Like it really. The official stance really is so unimportant in a game where you can make your own army, But whatever. What do you guys think?
I give a fuck. I give a fuck because I'm so much more on the lore side than everyone else. Let me clarify. I don't necessarily give a fuck that there are female Custodes, because when you really do delve into the lore, there is very little lore to say there can't be. It's not like when you go back to some of the Space Marine stuff and it specifically refers to them all as men. But what I don't like is that Games Workshop have done it if this was how they were supposed to release it and not just an accident, they haven't put in the time to explain it.
Oh, yeah.
And explain away the fact that there is literally 30 years now of written work that people spend hours reading and get into and believe in that.
Yeah.
That,
I mean, I think
that is just gone. Like we've never mentioned one for 30 years, but they've always been there. If that's a real comment, I'm pissed.
This tweet is bullshit. This like tweet response is like total like. I agree with you that like when the lore started, everything was basically just a white dude essentially, like squats. Like no one could be different in the 40k universe without them essentially starting as a white dude. It's like squats were like shrunk by gravity. They couldn't just be like space dwarfs. It's like Vulcan was like, I was the white man that was burnt by the lava on the lava planet. So in a way, we're just kind of lucky that when Games Workshop introduced like Sisters of Battle and stuff, they weren't just like, oh, they were dudes that moved to the soy planet and grew tits.
Yeah. I've kind of been slightly mulling it over. I haven't been reading anything online about it or watching any videos or anything about it. I kind of when I first saw it and heard about it, I thought, like you, Stoney, I just don't care. It's not that important. But we've spoken about female Space Marines before. We've tried to bridge that dangerous zone, and I know what you're saying, Welsh, about the lore. I also kind of think that the Custodian Guard, there's enough in the lore to say like you can say most of the Custodian Guards are men, and that it just so happens there hasn't been a female one that's been written about in the.
Like,
I do also feel like at this stage it's pretty acknowledged that Games Workshop will just pick and choose what parts of the lore they want to keep from the old times as well.
I mean, it does change. I mean, we've got Primaris Marines now; they didn't exist before. That would have been a moment where Games Workshop could have introduced female Space Marines. They didn't. I don't really want to have female Space Marines. I don't think it's a big issue. If someone wants to have a female Space Marine, I don't care. I don't think they should, because it's kind of the established law. I don't see why we have to have male, female, everything. I mean, why can't we have male Sisters of Battle?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
that's
ridiculous
one of the arguments,
argument.
Like you often see Misters of Silence. That's what the Sisters of Silence Rangers released at the same time. They were the female representation within the Emperor's Court.
Yeah.
But what you're saying there, Matt, about like if they turn up, there's not much in the law to say they couldn't be there. But like, come out with a proper story. Like, there's this one family of like Amazonian. They could have used like Amazonians as the basis or something from like the old law. Like,
I would say that this is a leak and we haven't had the full story. So maybe there's something else in the pipeline. The person replying on Twitter is probably some junior marketing person that potentially has lost their job by now. I mean, I am. And I kind of we mentioned in the Fabius Bile, and we've mentioned it before. Like, I wondered whether that story arc would have been a point where they could have introduced chaos female space marines, which might have been an interesting twist with the whole genetics. Maybe they will do. I would have been open to that. So in a way, this I think is an interesting way of them introducing a space marine like character that is in the lore now can be female, because they're not space marines. So space marines are still sort of safe, you know?
I feel like they couldn't have held out forever on this question. It wasn't going away. Do you know what I mean? This female space marine thing and whatnot. And at the end of the day, we've all talked about it in our own way, but this idea of like Games Workshop building a brand and becoming more sellable and all the rest of it. They've just finished the Horus Heresy. We were just talking about this in the last episode. They've just finished the Horus Heresy. You know, there's a bunch of new prospects opened in terms of lore and stuff. And like, if they can just slide in the fact that there's female, like whatever, space marines, custodes, this, that. I mean, it makes more sense to be female custodes than female space marines, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
was
think
interesting.
So.
I don't know if you guys saw the quote, the Darren. How would you say?
Bemsky Lowen or whatever.
That guy. Yeah.
Adam Dembski Bowden.
Aaron
Dembski Bowden. Jesus Christ. And he was saying, he replied to something somewhere, I don't know if it was on Reddit or Twitter or something, and he said that him and the Black Library team had discussed previously about whether there was any reason not to have female custodies in the lore, and they were shut down by GW from introducing them in the lore because the model range had already been designed and they were already all men. The authors and the law writers had suggested this was possible a long time before and were told no, because that the range existed and you had custodies and you had sisters, and that was the way they were going to play it, which personally from a model range I like.
Does this have anything to do with the Age of Sigmar shit getting shut down? Because these are the most like Age of Sigmar Storm Eternal characters that are there, and they've got females in there. So maybe this is just a way of luring over the guys that played.
But that's an interesting point, because I was going to say what we don't know as well is whether there is some more models with the new codex that are coming out, and now you mentioned the Sigmar Marines. Those were clearly, I'm pretty sure they were. You could tell what was female and male apart from their heads. I'm sure there was some difference. I think I would genuinely be down for a sprinkling of clearly female models that are in Custodian Guard armor. Maybe even they're slightly smaller. Maybe even they have a slightly different battlefield role. I'd be down for that, because they're the 10,000 that protect the Emperor. Like that, that could be a reason to have male and female
in there. There has to be some sisters of battle in there at some level in the Custodes force or whatever.
Well, the difference is that each Custodes, right? The reason you couldn't do the same explanation with Space Marines is every single Custodes is individually made from like child.
Yeah.
So they're not following like a batch production system in the Custodies. There is kind of wiggle room.
You can't join the You can't just join.
No, you're like
they're different. They're different to a Space Marine.
And like your DNA is basically stripped to nothing and rebuilt. So, you know. There's a lot of muscle mama comments online that I've really been enjoying, where people get too salty, someone jumping in with like, you just want to paint massive titted like 8 foot like muscle mamas.
And what?
Yeah. I mean, So
the argument
I
don't like though that you see on a lot of this is when people come on and they're like, "Oh, it doesn't fucking matter. It's all just toys," and it's like. That argument is just such a stupid argument in anything, because if it doesn't matter, why does that person care either? It does matter to a lot of people who've invested a lot of time in understanding and learning when things change like this without
Well,
without
yeah.
any thought behind it. It feels like you've been cheated a bit.
But I think that, I mean, we talked about how even the guys that make the law try to go to GW, and at the end of the day, it was the bottom line. And I think that really is, whenever you've got a question like this, the answer is money. And it's to sell more models.
But if it is
I
to sell
don't
more
know
models,
if it
I'm
would sell
really
more
interested.
models.
Yeah,
well,
I'm really interested to see
like-
thousands more women start playing Warhammer.
I don't think that it'll be thousand. Like, I think that they'll, these guys, they know what they're fucking doing. If they're like you say, you guys, like Matt, you were just saying, if they introduced a custodes that was like a fucking whatever,
female
this,
model.
that, or the other, then I'd be kind of interested in buying that, whatever, I mean, and that's what they'll do. They're not going to release oh shit, every box comes with 2 different alternatives, some like a titted version of armor and a non-titted version of armor. Because that's what it comes down to.
That's
on
what
the
I
battlefield.
want. That's what I want. I want a sprinkling of titted armored custodies, and I'll be down for it.
I mean, we were just talking about how they're going to do a Slaanesh release. Maybe they're going to do Slaanesh Chaos Ladies, because that's where every like deviant art, 18-year-old person who's going to do like a Slaanesh, they're just like bam, big titted Slaanesh person. That's my go-to.
And I did think, if this allows Games Workshop to say no, we're not saying that females aren't and can't be genetically engineered super warriors. Look, they're female custodians. But by the way, our law bottom line is Space Marines cannot be female. Then I'm totally down for it. This could be the way that they just shut that argument down.
Yeah.
Because the thing I'm down for it, like I've said, but the thing I don't like is this constant no, I want to see a female Space Marine. Like, shut up. That isn't the law, and it doesn't need to change. You can't have a male Sisters of Battle, and no fucking man is losing their shit about it because they're fucking female soldiers. So fucking get over it. Like, it's fucking pointless. If anyone could be in the Guard, nobody cares. Sisters of Battle, they're female. Space Marines, the law says they're male. Fine. And now
literally
we've got
the most gender
engineers.
representation of any IP that
give
exists.
Us don't change that law.
It's kind of what I'm saying, right? Is that the law is? I feel like the law is due a change. We talked about this again. I mentioned it earlier, but we're potentially branching out into new areas now. The established law is done.
It's not done. It's just the beginning.
You
can't ignore it. But you can't retcon it and start again.
But that the law writers want to introduce females. They've already said that, right? That's what Adam Densky-Bowden said, and he's kind of like one of the driving forces behind the law. So I feel like maybe if this show's still going in 10 years' time, if you're still listening to us in 10 years' time, and the market is awash with female Space Marines, and you don't even bat an eyelid at it, then I feel like that's kind of like, that could happen as well.
I'll be collecting male Sisters of Battle.
I think we've solved it there. Very clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't care. Also care.
At the end of the day, shut the fuck up about it. Like, it's just too much, man. It's too much shit all over the place. Well, forget everything we was just saying about custodians, because it turns out they're all shit, man or woman now, and orcs are really good because they're all dudes.
Yeah, so this is some new rules previews for orcs, right? New codex coming out. I haven't picked loads of them to mention, just the fun ones. Like, there's some real orky sounding things here. There's a detachment called Try That Button, where it's essentially like a random effect roll on multiple units. Do you remember how the old bubble chucker gun used to work, where sometimes it was great and sometimes it was crap? Like, this is kind of like random buffs throughout the game for your various units, which I think is a really fun way to play. Whether people in tournament play using random buffs, I've got no idea, but these sound really fun to me.
Yeah, that's cool. That's definitely Try the Button it's a cool name. It's a cool result. It's exactly what you'd expect from an orc player. That's awesome.
Yeah. There's another one called Bigger Shells for Bigger Gits, which is a stratagem to put on your big mechs and some grot vehicles to just like boost their fire output. Again, fun, thematic. And then this one I really like, it's an enhancement which essentially, instead of like a relic that you give your captain or something like that, you just make one of your orcs a really big show off. And like the more boys he's leading, the more attacks he gets whilst he's showing off. It's called Ferocious Show Off. And I thought that was really thematic as well of the rules. And I think these all added up. Big mechs are going to be really good in game. And orcs are going to play in the fun style they always should.
Oh yeah, so if you're an orc player out there, get excited, because I've heard on the grapevine that they're getting pretty good and that custodians are shit now. So crack on.
Rolling in my 6-4.
Oh yeah, hi, yeah, welcome to Shoreditch Games Workshop. Namaste.
Do we have any blood angels, he asks.
Yeah, we're not really into that kind of stuff here, mate. We like to try to push the more underground Astartes, if you know what I mean. Have you ever even heard of the Lamenters? All our models are actually handcrafted from clay by orphan children, and really quite a lot of the profits goes, you know, straight back to them. Would you like a cup of coffee whilst you browse? We grind our own beans here. What do you mean you've heard of the Lamenters and you think they're shit? The Lamenters... I mean, how much is a lot to an orphan child, really? You know what I'm saying. Like, what are they going to spend it on? You know, work experience is worth more than gold, or so I've heard. I've only ever worked at this one job in my 25 years, so... Relatively speaking, I guess that means you could say that these orphans are getting paid, you know, more than me. If you just take the money out of the equation, that is. Anyway, let's forget about this and learn about some cool underground space marines, yeah? Educate yourself.
Educate yourself.
Educate yourself.
Games Workshop. This is how we play.
So let's get things kicked off with Welshie. Who have you been looking at, and what are they about?
Well, boys, I brought one of my favourite chapters to the table, the Flesh Tearers. And I think the first time I ever saw a picture of a Flesh Tearer, I thought it's one of the coolest colour schemes that I've ever seen. The first thing you notice is that they look kind of like Blood Angels, but then they've also got some black. And you know I love black. Raven Guard, Black Templars. So they've got a bit of black, but also that the red... I remember looking at them and thinking the red is so much cooler than the red on a standard Blood Angel. Like, it's not Ferrari red.
Yeah.
It's like a deeper, almost corn, almost word bearer, like a crimson.
Yeah.
They actually look really like a Demon King, the Corn Demon King. There's like a thing you can paint your Marines in that look really similar to this, that have like the black heads.
Well, we'll come back to the kind of corn links in a minute, but that's the first thing. When I saw them, I thought, when you're flicking through all the chapters in the Codex and you see this color scheme, it jumps out. And then you notice that their chapter symbol on their pauldron is literally like a buzzsaw with a drop of blood in it. And that's cool as shit. And then you notice that they've all got fucking chainswords, which we know are the coolest Space Marine weapon. Like, nothing comes close to a chainsword. So that's kind of why I've always had a bit of love for these guys and why I've brought them to the table today. So their origins are very early. Their second founding chapter. So the second founding was like the earliest founding of new chapters that happens after the Horus Heresy. It's about 7 years after the Horus Heresy, apparently, when Guilliman decides that the legions are too big and they need to be chopped up.
So yeah, I was kind of wondering about that, because I always hear this about foundings of Space Marines, and so how does that work, basically? It's just like you say, they get too big and they need to be separated into...
So
no, that only happened once.
Yeah, so Guilliman, when he came up with like the Codex Astartes and stuff, we realised that the legions had got out of control. The 20 down to 18 legions had got too big for their boots, and no one legion should have that much power, especially considering that at the end of the Horus Heresy, some of the legions were like non-existent. I think the Salamanders had 7 companies left. They had like nothing left at the end of it. So what happened was the big legions get split up, and then the gene seed gets used to found new chapters. So the main chapters kind of get sent out, and people who are captains and leaders within the main chapters end up being given their own chapter that kind of utilizes the gene seed. And that gene seed switch often, as well, I'm sure we'll see a couple of times, leads to like slight breakages in the gene seed that means those chapters take on their own slight personality.
It's like those weird in the medieval times where they'd send off a daughter to somewhere to be bred with, and then eventually they're start producing these weird inbred offspring.
The talking of inbred offspring, like I can't remember what context it was in, but definitely last episode I mentioned the 13th founding a few times, and that was the one that got fucked up, and
got all chaosy.
Yeah, a lot of chaosy. So there's been like 20 foundings during the 10,000 years.
Yes,
since the Horus Heresy, where they just decide to found new Space Marine chapters.
For
the latest being the Primaris stuff.
Yeah. So these guys were one of the earliest of that system, essentially, and led by, at the time, one of the heroes of the Horus Heresy. So the person that was given charge of the Flesh Tearers was a guy called Nasir Amit, who was the captain of the 5th Company Blood Angels, and he's a massive player in the Black Library series, kind of recurrent hero, and he is kind of like a raged out, roided douchebag that probably should have been in the World Eaters. He is like everything Sanguinius isn't. Like, he's angry, he loses his cool too quickly, he doesn't think about anything other than like the quickest route to destroying people and getting what he wants. He already has these like weird, angry personality traits, but that helps him kind of fight his way to the top of the 5th Company. And because he has these angry things, he actually befriends a lot of World Eaters, and he's often joins them in their fighting pits. So, the World Eaters do these fighting pits where they chain themselves to a mate, and then they 2-on-2 like beat each other to death in some cases. And that's like before people knew about Space Marines killing each other. These fighting pits existed, and he would go down and do this because he just loved it, just loved to fight. And that's where he got the name, the Flesh Tearer. So that is where this name initially comes from. Nasir Amit is given control of this new chapter, which then takes on his moniker of Flesh Tearer and Flesh Tearers. He's a pretty cool character, like very, very early on. It's not directly because of him, but like when things like the Black Rage and the Red Thirst begin to develop. So the Red Thirst is the like vampire part of the mutated gene seeds that they all have, where they're often like drinking blood and going a little bit nuts. And then the Black Rage is after Sanguinius dies, they like go into this rage whilst they're fighting, where they think they're Sanguinius dying in the Siege of Terror, and they just absolutely lose their shit. So this guy was basically already like that before Sanguinius dies and the Black Rage like starts seeping into the gene seed.
He had the Grey Rage or whatever, but came before. He was ready to go.
Exactly. And he's gone like, as a fighter, he's gone 1-to-1 with Khan and wins like in the Horus Heresy series, or they both win. They just beat the shit out of each other.
He doesn't lose.
He doesn't lose.
That's
right.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, not to lose against Khan is pretty impressive. He loses his shit quite early on and kills a load of space wolves, and that all gets hushed under the carpet. And like Sanguinius like doesn't want to tell Lehman Russ because like it all gets like hushed away. It's all very kind of secretive. But before Sanguinius finds the Legion, the kind of company that Nasir Amit is leading are known as the Revenants, because they literally rip apart their opponents and feast on their bodies like during fighting. And they think it's because the Blood Angels gene seed leads to an overactive omophagia. You know, that thing Space Marines have where they can like eat brains and learn people's like thoughts and history and stuff. The Blood Angels have got really strong that, and that's where they think that link to Sanguinius comes from, because they have this ritual where they drink from his blood, because he's basically Jesus. So that's what, the sanguinary priest with the cup of blood, which has got like 1 drop in a million of like Sanguinius blood.
Yeah.
Because they've got these overactive omophagias, they're really like psychically linked to Sanguinius when he turns up, which is why when he dies, they all go completely fucking nuts. Despite all of that, and at the end of the Siege of Terror, being found in what is described as a sea of loyal corpses where he's lost his mind and butchered like 500 loyal Space Marines around him. He's still given control of a chapter in the second founding. And that's the kind of basis origin story of the Flesh Terrors.
I mean, he does sound like trouble, this guy. He likes going out, getting in fights and eating people. And they're like, yeah, mate, let's give you a bunch of Space Marines.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what happens. And he's like the founding father of those. The current chapter master is a bloke called Gabriel Seth, who there is a model for, and there is rules for, with the huge double-handed chainsword. So he is the current chapter master of the Flesh Terrors. And I think he's in some computer game, is he, Matt? Or is that the Blood Ravens game?
No, that's the Blood Ravens. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But Gabriel Seth has like he's quite a well-known chapter master.
Yeah, and he's in a lot of lore. So a friend of the show, James Swallow, the Blood Angels trilogy he did, Red Fury, Black Tide, Deus Sanguinius, focuses quite heavily on Gabriel Seth. So he's quite fleshed out in the lore. And he's kind of just like a bit of a watered down, I haven't got many notes on him because he's just kind of a bit of a watered down Nasir Amit. He's a little bit more in control of himself, but he does have a bit of a tendency to lose it. He's a tough guy to work with. No one kind of wants to join these guys because they have a tendency to kill all of their allies. So they
when you bring in the double-handed chainsaw to work, you know you're a difficult person to work with. You know?
So they frequently work alone, and there's been a couple of massacres that they may or may not have been involved in. They are under the eye of the Inquisition, and also they're going to go extinct as a chapter. Only a few of them know this. Gabriel Seth, he's mates with Dante though. They seem to get on all right. But the gene seed is deteriorating with every use, and there's probably only 20 years of them left when Gabriel Seth joins. So his whole thing is like, get the most out of us. Like, we're just going to drop in and fuck everyone up just over and over again. That's our plan. We're not here for the long term. We're just here to show that we can be honorable and kill the enemies of the Imperium. So yeah, he becomes mates with Dante in Devastation of Baal, which is one of the like most recent big things.
Yeah, I was gonna say like they're like they're second tier Blood Angels. They're like Blood Angels, and then there's the Flesh Terrors. They're always helping the Blood Angels
they
out.
often have their own detachment and stuff in the Codex, you know, their own fighting style because of it. So yeah, him and Dante end up defending Sanguinius's tomb together from hordes of Tyranids, and then Dante gets knocked down by the Swarm Lord, and Gabriel Seth rescues him. So you know,
is that when he gets turned into a Primaris Marine?
Well, and this is when the Primaris Marines come, and Gabriel Seth
save them.
Seth hates it because apparently the Primaris are really resistant to the Red First and the Black Mage. And Seth's like, you're taking away all the personality from our Legion. And it's kind of like we were talking about just now. It's a bit like he's the kind of lore gatekeeper. And he's like, you can't do this. Like, you're getting rid of the personality from 40k, the darkness. You're whitewashing it with Primaris.
Yeah.
So yeah, he gets pissed about that. Another kind of thing that they sweep under the carpet is that their home planet is called Cretaceous. When they find it, it's a death world. It's basically Jurassic Park with some like lost tribes of humans. They go like dinosaur hunting. There's mosquitoes that can penetrate power armor, and they wipe it clean. But now they have blood farms of humans because the Flesh Terrors, to satiate their thirst, drink human blood farmed blood. So they don't lose it on their home planet.
Oh,
no wonder they're being followed by the Inquisition.
These guys are on the edge. This shit ain't really kosher.
As you can imagine, they've got loads of Death Company. They're the only Blood Angels successor chapter that has walking Death Company rather than ones with just jetpacks. Lots of Death Company dreadnoughts. They're just kind of like the bad boy rock star. They're the bad boy image of the Blood Angels.
Do they still suffer from the Black Rage?
Yeah. Like massively, more so than any other Blood Angel. So their gene seed in the second founding became more susceptible to both the red first and the black rage, and that susceptibility increases with every use of the gene seed. They're not going to be around much longer. So except now they're full of Primaris who aren't quite as susceptible.
So Gabriel Seth let them bring in the Primaris versions.
Well, yeah, he couldn't really say no because Gilliman told him he had to. But he is quoted in one of the things as saying something along the lines of what we would say, which was something like, "We don't want to be fucking ultramarines."
These are
paraphrasing there.
But would people want to be flesh tearers? I mean, that sounds pretty shit as well.
There's a few...
how can this be right? You know, like how can they be like, yeah, cool? This
blood
is
farms aren't right.
These guys are just like corn guys, right? Surely.
But this is 40k. This is the blurring of the lines. These are the chapters that we love. You know,
they fight for the Emperor. Maybe it's
Sanguinius was like, yeah, cool. I'll give these guys the nod. Everyone's just been like, yeah.
He was dead though. He didn't decide to make them. He was dead.
He made Nasir Amit his like fifth company captain though.
Yeah. I mean, that's low pecking order, isn't it?
But did you not know old matey who like beat up people in the pits and stuff?
Yeah, Nasir Amit. That's what I mean. He made him his like fifth company guy. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. So you know, he's like, oh yeah, this fucking psychopath. Let's promote him through the ranks. He knows. Sanguinius knew what he was doing. He's responsible.
And the other thing I found when I was looking at this, you guys can see, if you just Google like rogue trader flesh tearers, they're old in lore as well, but they used to be black with this bright yellow flag with a buzzsaw on. So they look nothing like Blood Angels originally.
Well, maybe that Death Company are black, aren't they? Maybe that.
Yeah,
maybe that's.
And I mean that's also why they have the black pauldrons and stuff.
Oh, of course, yeah. They have like a big fan following. Like, what's the guy that used to do the games? Wade Price.
Wade Price. Wade Wilson's Deadpool. Sorry, Wade Price. I'm sure he'd like to be Deadpool.
Yeah,
he's got an amazing army of these.
He's well into flesh tearers. His models are great, and you are right. The color scheme, the red is just nicely different. Blood Angels is just a bit too bright. All of the legions are like bright white, bright yellow, bright red, bright blue. All the, what do you call those colors? They're like the main colors.
Up primary colors.
Primary colors. They're like the primary colors, and then everything else. Yeah, it's a great color scheme.
Well, I'll go back. This is the primary color of chaos, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Well, there are rumors, aren't there, throughout the lore that the insanguination, I think they call it, where they drink of the cup of Sanguinius, that at some point that cup hath been tainted by Khorne. And that's where the Black Rage really comes from. They're just vampires.
Yeah.
And vampires are sexy.
Well, they're not these ones, because they're all men.
We'll see about that.
What the fuck?
I want to tell you about the Crimson Fists. Their fists are crimson.
So many puns.
Yeah, I was going to say much worse things, but this is a chapter that I've always quite liked. I've always wanted to paint one. The blue on their power armor, there's just something nicer about the color scheme than Ultramarines. They are like the Black Templars. They're always sort of in the background. They've been like the poster boys for various editions. They're always depicted in final last stands with big nuclear explosions in the background. That picture, if you know what I'm talking about, was on the box set of the Space Marine Battle Force in I don't know, 3rd edition, 4th edition. So they've kind of been like the Templars, second tier below the Ultramarines. The Ultramarines mostly have been the poster boys, but Blood Angels, Crimson Fists, and Black Templars have also had their time in the sun. I've always liked their time in the artwork.
They were the original Rogue Trader guys, but their whole thing is they're getting fucked over. That's always been there in every piece of art and every piece of lore you hear about them, is they're getting blown up by some shit and doing some kind of last stand.
And that's what I'm going to tell you about. So I've been digging deeper into the Crimson Fists, and no surprise, but they are a second founding successor chapter of the Imperial Fists.
Oh, you
Yeah.
don't have red fists, so I'm excited to find the origin of this.
And we will delve into the origins of that. So they are second founding, so the same as the Flesh Tearers. They're kind of fairly ultramarine. I was kind of thinking, like, reading the lore about them, if you mix an ultramarine with an Imperial Fist, then you may get a Crimson Fist. That's kind of their personality in a nutshell. They do follow the Codex Astartes quite religiously. So the lore that Gulliman set up. So they fight a bit like the Ultramarines. They've been
They
nearly
say that
annihilated.
stupid thing over and over again, though, because
What?
if they don't, they're already better.
Yeah. They were nearly annihilated in nearly, I don't know what the right way to say this, but the time that 40k is currently set at, they've nearly been annihilated, and I'm going to go into that in a bit of detail. They fight the orcs a lot, so the orcs are their like prime nemesis, which is also a bit like the Templars. And the Crimson Fists paint their power armor a deep blue with crimson trim and white markings, so white markings like the Ultramarines. But when a neophyte, so that's a trainee,
they paint it that color. They don't get issued armor. Do they get given like grey armor and they have to paint it themselves? I guess they never really thought about this.
No, yeah, that's sort of how it was written online, and I thought exactly the same thing. Like, I was imagining Space Marines with a paintbrush painting their armor, which would chip. I think, realistically, you'd have some servitors with airbrushes and do a proper.
Yeah, no, I don't mean. I don't mean about the logistics of it. I just mean.
No, I want to talk about the logistics of painting power armor. Be a bit like powder coating, maybe 24-hour cycles baked on.
I don't know. Powder coating ain't no good for power armor, surely.
No, but this is 40K.
I'm imagining a servitor that spits the paint out of its mouth and then dries it on with his arse fan.
And someone has to wave a candle above it to dry.
Yeah.
So when a neophyte, that's a trainee Space Marine, finally joins the ranks of the chapter, so famously in the lore in the codexes, that's basically like 1 in 1,000 people finally get into the chapter. Their power armor left gauntlet is taken and painted crimson. So that's like the mark of when you finally get into the chapter, you get your left fist painted crimson. And this is symbolic of Rogel Dawn's tradition of cutting the palms of new recruits into the Imperial Fists Legion. So that's why they have a Crimson Fists. And the veterans.
What
so when you're
Rogel Dawn being a cunt again.
So that's another link with blood. So we're running on a theme here. But when you're a veteran and you enter what's called the Crusade Company.
Why is it called why is Rogel Dawn all in yellow then? Does he like piss on your other hand or something? So, how does that work?
No.
Official Imperial Fit. After you cut your hand, you get a golden shower.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, this is, as I go into in a minute, it's a separate chapter. So Rogel Dawn isn't doing this. It's their link to the Imperial Fists.
Oh, okay.
So Rogel Dawn isn't here.
They are untainted by piss.
These guys don't piss on. Well, they don't even cut their hands. They just paint their hands crimson. So
they don't even cut their hands. That's bullshit. No. Oh, these guys are bullshit. I hate them now.
When the veterans, so you have a left crimson fist, but when you become a veteran, you also get your right gauntlet painted crimson. So that's what you get for surviving hundreds of campaigns. You get both fists painted in red, which I think would look quite weird in real life. I don't think I've seen that on a model. But they are like the Black Templars because they were founded at the same time as the Black Templars. So when the Codex Astartes was written by Rabute Gulliman and the legions were ordered to separate into chapters to be smaller, Rogel Dawn wasn't happy with it, but eventually he allowed the Imperial Fists to be split into 3 chapters. One was the Black Templars. One was the Crimson Fists. What was the other one?
They not just remain the Imperial Fist?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, the Imperial Fist. So the Crimson Fist chapter was created, and Rogel Dawn sort of begrudgingly allowed that to happen. And they were made mostly from the Astartes that had just been initiated into the Imperial Fists. So Rogal Dawn basically said, you can have all the new guys start a new chapter, and I'll give you some veterans to be the leaders. And the first chapter master was a guy called Alexis Pollux, who, like the Flesh Tearers, has also had his backstory fleshed out quite a lot in the new Horus, well, not new, but the Horus Heresy book series from Black Library in the book about Sotha.
Grumpy,
yeah,
dour, northern bastard in the books.
He is. I quite liked him in the books. I can't
But
remember.
is that not also
Battle of
because he's
Sotha.
always? I swear, every time I hear about a Crimson Fist campaign, it's a failed campaign where everything's gone
Oh
tits
yeah,
up.
we're gonna get
It's not been like a part of like 100 failed campaigns.
Well, yeah, but he's an Imperial Fist, remember? So he's an Imperial Fist at this point.
He's like the opposite of Sigismund when you're reading Horus Heresy. Sigismund's like going his own way and
the
wants
Emperor's
to be
champion.
the tip of the spear, and Pollux is like, we must build a wall and defend the wall.
and the books where he's on Sotha and stuff, he's kind of, isn't he sort of just on his own as a representative of the Imperial Legion? And he has the traits of Rogal Dawn's, the engineering side, where he just does want to stay behind a console and organize defense systems and stuff.
He's his hacking glove. A red hand. He slides on his red hacking glove and gets to fucking work.
So anyway, Alexis Pollux, so he becomes the chapter master of the newly founded Crimson Fists, and he's known for his massive physical size, prowess, and his leadership in tactical expertise. Pollux led the Crimson Fists for the first 800 standard years of their existence. During this time, he did much to shape their interpretation of the Codex Astartes and their combat doctrines. So not just hiding behind walls, but they're fairly Codex compliant. But they, like the Templars as well, I might be saying that quite a bit, were a crusading fleet-based chapter. So they would fly around with a fleet. They didn't have a home world. And for the next 9 Terran millennia, much like the Templars, they were fleet-based, and most of their activity was based in the loci sector of the Segmentum Tempestus, and twice the chapter during that time had been assigned to eliminate other Space Marine chapters that had embraced heresy, Sons of Gideon and the Marines Vigilant, which sound quite interesting. I wonder who Gideon is. It was not until almost 800 standard years into the 40th millennium that the Crimson Fists were granted feudal rights to their own planet, which is called Rin's World. So that's their home world now, their chapter planet, which is also located in the loci sector Segmentum Tempestus. So they've kind of just lived and fought in the same area of space for 10,000 years, so much that they were given a world by the High Lords of Terror.
They got the crib, they got the planet.
Or it was what are squatters' rights? If you stay there long enough, it just becomes yours. So there was a successful Voltigern crusade, and the High Lords of Terror, because it was successful, awarded them Rin's World, the planet. The proximity of which was near to some of their recruiting worlds anyway. So it was near worlds that they would get their neophytes from. There's a planet called Blackwater and various other worlds that they would get people from. Weirdly, not from Rin's World. So they didn't even get their neophytes from Rin's World when they were chapter based.
That place was shit. Everyone there was rubbish.
Yeah, they never thought they'd pick one. But they constructed their fortress monastery out of the dismantled remains of their battle barge, which was called
Arx Tyrannus,
or something like that. So their battle barge was heavily damaged in that crusade, and because they couldn't repair it, they took it apart and rebuilt it on the surface of the planet as their fortress monastery, which I think is quite cool. I think Rogal Dawn would appreciate that. Yeah.
That's a very Roman thing to do.
Yeah, reuse your battered ship. Yeah, definitely. Rin's World itself, which, because the Crimson Fists have always sort of been around in the background, is the planet that for most codexes would have been marked on the galaxy map. It's classed as an agri world, and the world itself and the Rin star system were both named after an imperial reclamator called Saladano Malvaro Rin.
What did he find?
Well, he first led the imperial colonists to the system and reclaimed Rin's world in the name of mankind. So in the era of the Emperor and the Great Crusade, he went back and took it back for the Emperor. But then it got sort of lost in space, then rediscovered by a rogue trader called Uzieth Palanandro in the 34th millennium as part of an explorator fleet. Planet itself, because it's an agri world, is sparsely populated, mountainous, and the main city is called New Rin City, which is an inspired
He really
name.
named a lot of shit after himself, that guy, didn't he?
And actually, until then, because like I say, like it's always been in the books and it's always been mentioned, but I've never known who Rin was. So now we know it was an imperial reclamator.
It was a guy with no backstory, like every answer in 40k.
So, and there's 8 smaller cities, but it is quite close to other imperial worlds, but it's also close to lots of orc-controlled space, which is why the Crimson Fists end up fighting or specializing in fighting orcs quite a lot. And the closest neighboring human planet is a place called Bad Landing, which sounds like a great planet name and really interesting. Why would you name a planet Bad Landing? But who knows?
I'm guessing it's hard to land on.
Very hilly.
Yeah, or maybe the first people that went there you can imagine the first people that went there just had a really bad landing.
Everyone's got creaky floorboards.
Yeah. So Rin's world, like I say, isn't actually the world that they get their new recruits from. So there's a couple of worlds near it that they pick instead. And before a devastating invasion, the planet was protected by a formidable missile system designed to deter invaders and a relatively skilled planetary defense force called the Rin's Guard. It had a pre-invasion population of 200 million, and because they don't take their new recruits from the human population, they're not that bothered by managing the planet. They don't actually have the right to manage the planet. There's some noble families on the planet known as the Calidistras that actually run the planet and administer it as a fief in the chapter master's place. So the chapter master isn't the planetary governor, and Rin's world actually has a separate planetary governor, which is quite interesting. Rather than the Space Marine chapter actually controlling everything to do with the planet, they just let the humans get on with it. Rumors are that there was actually a third heretical chapter that they destroyed during the 10,000 years before the Great Rift, which was called the Soul Drinkers, which I've definitely heard of before, but I can't remember where from.
Soul Drinkers still exist. There's like a couple of them left, I think. They're the purple. I think they're good Emperor's.
Hello, listeners. It's your old buddy editor fucking Stoney here again. Just to let you know that the more observant amongst you will probably have realised that we actually did this last episode. I did a little editorial not too dissimilar to this to talk about the Soul Drinkers. They're pretty cool guys with a bunch of fairly well beefed out lore that are all hiding in the veiled section of the Halo stars now. So check out our last episode if you want to know a bit more about them.
So the dark rumours persist that there were 6 second founding chapters of the Imperial Fists, not the 3 that I mentioned at the beginning, and one of them were the Soul Drinkers. Okay.
Yeah, but it's a bit dodgy, isn't it? Because it's never been confirmed.
Yeah.
But if you look up a Soul Drinker, they're essentially an Emperor's Children armor.
Yeah, because I'm sure I've looked that up in the
beautiful color scheme.
Codex. Yeah, and we've mentioned them before. But anyway, the on Etamion 4, an entire battle company of the Crimson Fists fought to eradicate the remaining Soul Drinkers, and the Soul Drinkers outmaneuvered and destroyed all of the Crimson Fists. So this is now, like you say, Stoney, how they have endless campaigns of being beaten, and the Soul Drinkers got away. So, yeah. So that's a campaign where they lost badly.
Yeah, there's a couple of cool names: Crimson Fist versus Soul Drinkers. I don't know. It sounds like a wrestling match or some shit.
But their worst defeat was about to happen because, like I say, Rin's world is not that far away from Orc space. In particular, there's an Orc empire, the Empire of Charadon, which was growing, and Rin's world became a target to its ruler, Snagrod, the Arch Arsonist. So this big Orc war boss wanted to take Rin's world for himself, and they invaded in the year 989 M41. So this is, like I say, this is like right up bang nearly into modern 40k. And Snagrod had united many of the warring Orc factions in that part of space and the Loci sector, and began a massive war. And he conquered, first of all, he conquered the world of Bad Landing. So the Orcs had a better landing there.
Oh, they loved it. They renamed it Good Landing, gave it 5 stars on Yelp. It got that place up and running again.
So because they took Bad Landing, the Crimson Fists decided they would send a company to respond. So they sent the 3rd company, but due to faulty intelligence, the Space Marines, when they landed, were brutally defeated. So they had a bad landing.
Renamed again. Fuck.
Yeah. And then they decided to retreat to the Rin star system because, as I said, it had a sophisticated system of defensive satellites, as you would expect from a chapter related to the Imperial Fists. And they held the Orcs at bay. Their defensive system worked absolutely brilliantly until one of the missiles, in a freak accident, got fired up from the chapter monastery, flew up into the sky, went into a cloud, and then come back down through the cloud and smashed into their chapter monastery, which, remember, was built from their original starship. And it was a plasma warheaded missile, so massive, great big thing. And it was designed to punch through void shields and go deep into the armored hulls of warships. So it was quite capable of destroying this old, ruined chapter monastery, which it did. It destroyed the whole monastery, everything below ground. Secondary explosions ripped through and destroyed everything else.
So, hang on. Your selection for pick a chapter that isn't a main chapter but still pretty cool is one that's essentially blew themselves up. That's your cool chapter.
Yeah.
Not vampires.
No, I didn't pick this chapter. I picked this chapter because they're always the ones on the poster boys that are always being blown up in Last Stands. I don't think they're necessarily cool. I've always liked the color scheme, like I said. Okay. But anyway, in that explosion,
I think they're cool. I like the fact that they blow themselves up and shit. they're the doofuses of 40k, but also they're kind of like heroic doofuses.
Yeah, they are a bit. Yeah, but in the explosion, they lost 6 entire companies. So a chapter normally has 10 if you follow the Codex Astartes. Yeah. So that's pretty bad. I mean, that's like 600 Space Marines on paper. 16 Space Marines were left in the ruins, including the chapter master Pedro Cantor.
So good he got a paint named after him.
Yes. And so they survive, and as the Crimson Fists Fortress Monastery served as the primary control for the world's defensive satellites and the star system's satellites, basically everything just shut down and collapsed, and the Orcs came in their millions. But the survivors, the 16 survivors, managed to find other survivors, and slowly but surely they found more and more battle brothers in the ruins and in the nearby neighborhood and the cities that were nearby. And Cantor was left with a decision few chapter masters have ever had to make, which is, do you lead a last stand or do you defend and fight a somewhat guerrilla war until Imperial forces can come and save you? What do you think he did?
Well, I know what he did because it's a famous piece of artwork.
I think he did the more stupid thing and did the last stand, like,
well, just the last stand.
Yeah, last stand.
Well,
sorry.
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly what I thought. And I thought that I'd chosen a chapter, like I say, because they had a cool poster. They've been the poster boys. There's famous Golden Demon entries that have the model of the Crimson Fists, like as that Warhammer poster
I looked
depicted.
that up earlier. The Crimson, if you want to look it up, it's called the Crimson Fist's Last Stand. It's by Volomir.
Great.
Volomir's the guy's account, and it's fucking beautiful.
And I think there's been different versions of it as like newer models have come out. People have made it's a vinaigrette of
We should explain
famous.
to our audio listeners that this is the one that looks a bit like the Crimson Fist doing a human pyramid with a guy holding his big red fist up.
Someone with a big fist
all around.
Yeah.
He got like an orc head in his hand.
I don't know. Maybe some of them did. No.
But it looks beautiful.
So at this point, I thought, well, I know what he's going to do. They're going to have a spectacular last stand. And weirdly, no. So I don't know whether the artwork depicts them like picking the survivors out from their fortress monastery initially. I don't know. But there was no last stand. Cantor decides that they're going to have like a running battle, guerrilla warfare style with the orcs, defend what they can, mostly forget about the human population and just protect their chapter's honor.
Flesh Terror style, baby. Kill them
all.
All on your way out.
Kick that small child out the way. My enormous armored space marine buddy needs me. I must protect our honor.
I must protect. Yeah. Oh, you can imagine that,
throwing
can't you?
a grandma to the ground. Get out of my way, grandma. I need to protect our honor.
But they did protect their honor, and the Imperium came, and massive Imperial Navy fleet came, and 2 years later basically liberated the Crimson Fists and saved the Crimson Fists. But it resulted in catastrophic losses. So they were also a chapter that had almost been wiped out, and they had almost been wiped out literally at the point that the Great Rift opens, like maybe a couple of hundred years before the Great Rift. So it's slap right up to date with modern 40k in the setting.
Is Cantor still alive right now in M42 or whatever we're in?
Yeah, Cantor is currently still the chapter master. His primary focus between the end of what's been known as the Rin's World campaign, so after the liberation, to up to date 40k when they get Primaris reinforcements, his primary goal was just to rebuild the chapter, not really get into big campaigns. You know, they've lost the fortress, they've lost 60% of the chapter, lost most of their gene seed and the ancient war gear, probably a load of dreadnoughts that were asleep. So yeah, they were just sort of hanging around in the background waiting for the chapter to have enough men in to actually go out and fight when Archmagus Cool appears in a freighter and
so
gives
they've got
them
some Primaris too then.
Gives them Primaris, yeah. So straight the doors opened and crimson painted Primaris Marines marched out.
So how many are we talking about in terms of numbers of Crimson Fists these days?
Well, yeah, don't really have an answer for that, but I mean they could well be, because it's the setting now. I don't know. I don't know if I'm 100% on this, but I think the setting now is like a couple of hundred years after Belisarius Coolers created the Primaris Marines.
So I think, but I don't know how many each place got. You know, they don't specify the exact numbers.
But he also gives them the technology to create more of them. So in a couple of hundred years, I suspect that the chapter is back up to around 1,000 fully fledged chapter.
Till they fucking blow themselves up again.
They are cool though. They're one of those chapters that you see a lot in, like they get a whole spread of artwork to themselves.
Yeah.
It's just another one that you look at and you think these are so much cooler than a standard the main chapters. They're just everything about them's cooler.
Yeah, they are.
Maybe it's because you don't see it all the time, but God, they're cool color schemes.
I don't know what it is, because they've got a lot of the same aesthetic as the Ultramarine stuff, like kind of like ropes and, you know, cloaks and shit like that. But it's just somehow so much cooler. Yeah, the deep blue and the red hand. It's awesome.
Yeah. And I been thinking about those Golden Demon entries, and I'm sure they had a model. Turns out they did. There was a 25th anniversary model. But if you look online or if you just Google Crimson Fist model, I mean, it's not it's not amazing. It's a fine
Very
cast,
good.
but it's
Did
cool.
they
And
not
that
do a limited edition model as well, like
they
a
may have, yeah.
just a one-off thing that came with something or whatever? Maybe you got it for Las Vegas Open or some bullshit that they do.
Oh,
you know?
maybe. Yeah.
I
But
can't remember, but I remember seeing a cool one somewhere.
like we say, that I mean, they're not like second tier, they're like third tier chapter. You know, they're not like the Templars. They've never had a codex, but they've always had rules. They've had rules in White Dwarf, they've had mentions in Space Marine codexes. They're kind of there in the background. Yeah. This model definitely, maybe some more models. I think I will definitely paint one. I don't know whether I will paint one now after this episode, but
Paint one now
Cantor
after this
blue.
episode. Throw those
Yeah.
Bretonians away, Matt, and start a Crimson Fist army.
yeah, I'm gonna start Crimson Fist Army.
Cantor blue
Yeah.
and corn red, the two colors you just talked about, are in my top 5. They go on like a dream. They cover black really nicely. They're one coat. They mix in with all of the other colors so nicely to like dull them down. I love them. Cantor blue, corn red, two colors we've just been talking about. They're perfect.
Cash rules everything around me. Queen, get the money. Dollar bill, yo.
I'm going to tell you guys about some cool ass space sharks, and I think I should probably just start this section off by just doing, a quick apology for last show and be like, sometimes we don't always do the best research or whatever, but I feel like we've made it up this show, and I hope to continue that right now by starting telling you guys about the space sharks. And really, this all starts with a university professor named Dr. Robert Bolton and his partner, Dr. Luther Paragrim, who created a machine known as the Gene Slammer, which is capable of changing aquatic animals into anthropomorphic hybrids and combining their DNA with human DNA. Bolton's 4 sons, John, Bobby, Cooper, and Clint, all enter the Gene Slammer and are transformed into different sharks. Those sharks are called Ripster.
Stoney, I think you're thinking of the
Jab.
street sharks, mate.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure this is.
No,
is
did
right.
they have rollerblades? The ones that you were talking about?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Have I been doing the wrong research?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Sorry.
shit.
Half shark, half man, fighting evil. That's the plan. Street shark.
All right, well, let me tell you about this other bullshit faction I found out about called the Space Sharks. And basically, these guys, they live in the kind of top of space. You know how we were talking on some of our Tyranid episodes about how the universe is basically like a plate, and the Tyranids are coming in from kind of underneath it.
Yeah.
Well, they think that the fact that the Tyranids aren't coming in from the top of it is because the fucking street sharks are there battling crime and beating the shit out of Tyranids up there. They were very active in the Badab Wars. They've got this. They always wear they always wear heresy armor from that time. And this is basically like cobbled together from things that they can find, because they're really, really isolated up there in the top bit of space, whatever it's called. The above the plate bit of space. So anything they can find. And the Badab armor, all that old school heresy armor, that was designed to last. They don't make armor like that like they used to anymore. Like, you can cobble it together out of things. I think we even talked about on like an old episode how those little bolts on the side are basically like, you can like pop them open like an egg, and they've got like, a little treat inside or something. I can't remember. It's got like some survival shit in there, like an advent calendar. At some point in their history, there was a day of exile where they were banished. They were thrown out and sent off to kill shit until they had atoned for it. No one knows who their successor chapter is.
Oh yeah.
So I've had a quick DNA test done on a space shark here, and I want you guys to try to make a guess as to who you think the father of these space sharks is, because nobody is claiming their existence. Do you think it's the Raven Guard? I think maybe it's the World Eaters, the Night Lords, or the Salamanders.
Oh, that's a good question. Space sharks are often quite pasty, aren't they? When you in skin, so that's giving me Raven Guard vibes. But their logo, sometimes they have the like shark jaws around their like neck brace, don't they? And that's a bit World Eatery. Like OG World Eater symbol. I'm
Just
not saying
go,
salamanders because they're not. They're definitely too pale to be
I'm
salamanders.
gonna go salamanders.
I'll go Raven Guard.
Raven Guard. Okay, well, I've got back the DNA test here, and what if I told you it was all of the above? Whoa! That's right. No one really knows, and they've deep suspicion that it's a mix mash of a bunch of cum from a bunch of these different units founded their gene seed.
Well, that's
They
quite
got
cool.
black eyes, like straight black eyes, like black jewels, black eyes.
Sharks.
That
like
is
a
something
shark.
that is something that happens to them. But because their lore is sort of split into two parts, really, and that, as so often is the case, is the weird OG Rogue Trader stuff and the more recent stuff that's hinted at in some of the Black Library things. And the OG Rogue Trader stuff basically just had them as guys that were completely grey, black eyes. They were just sharks in space. And the new lore hasn't really advanced that a great deal, but it has done slightly. And that is that there might be the remaining Astartes from a chapter called the
Charadons.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, like a Latin thing for shark, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or something like that. Yeah. Okay. If we were floating around in that top bit of space right now and we needed some help, let's say we were all on some spaceships and some fucking Tyranids started coming out, whatever, or planets started getting invaded, whatever, we're in trouble. This is kind of how it would go. We're losing the fight. We're all in the meeting room stressing out. Suddenly we get a call on our most oldest bit of tech. Like, we're on the spaceship with all these holograms and everything, and the fucking Nokia 3310 starts ringing. And we pick it up, and someone in the most formal High Gothic, the most ancient form of High Gothic on the other end, starts asking if they can join in the fight. They say that they've got all the codes and everything. They've got the number. They've got the number of the 3310. No one has that. So they have to be legit. So you're like, okay, cool, everything seems good. Yeah, let them join in. They're brothers in arms or whatever. They disappear. You hear nothing else from them. You think I got fucking prank called there. Nothing fucking happened. Over the next few days, you start to get reports of massive space marines kicking the shit out of the enemy. Really nasty stuff too. No clean kills. Savage, bloody kills that leave nothing but a trail of destruction. None of the gear is left from any alien races they might be battling. Just wolves covered in blood and viscera. But there's something weird about them. There is some weird thing in their, either in their gene shit or just something weird about them, which is, like you say before, Welsh, is that their skin is grey and rubbery. They get like sharp teeth, and they get like a sense of mercilessness. They become silent and don't really want to speak to anybody unless it's in really, really highfalutin Gothic. They become really formal. They're like butlers, like like savage butlers.
Sounds like a 90s grunge band.
The Savage Butlers. Yeah. And you see, this is where what I was talking about before with the Street Sharks, this is where the crossover starts to happen, because they're kind of like a 40k version of the Street Sharks, but only they became lame instead of rad. The other thing about them is they get fucking massive. They grow really big. And there's rumors that some of them get bigger than a dreadnought and can be mistaken for a Primarch.
Are you talking of old Megalodon?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's the name of their chapter master, Megalodon.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
So their whole kind of like attack style and that is like they're basically shark-like, their fighting style. So the way they like attack a planet or something is they'll just like hit it with overwhelming force. They carry, like, again, pretty on the nose, they carry like harpoons on the side of their ships that they launch and just fuck stuff up. And apparently that's like a world eaters thing. So people say like, oh, maybe they're like a world eaters thing. And after they finish fucking up the planet, they'll come to you and they'll be like, hey, we just helped you out back there and everything's cool and that, but maybe you could help us out with some like armor and some troops that we could make into like weird grey.
Turn into sharks.
Turn into radical shark dudes, but in the future,
Give us some moisturizer. Top us
Maybe
up,
lack
we've
of
run out.
moisturizer. I don't know. I don't know what it is that makes them do that. Too like it's kind of like. Do you remember when all them kids drunk Sunny D and went
Yeah.
orange or whatever? It's like that. Maybe they've got some like grey. They can only drink some kind of grey juice. Grey Sunny D. Sharks don't like Sunny D. Oh, what am I talking about?
I was trying to think of what sharks do like. I mean,
Can they
Fighting
smell
crime.
blood? Didn't these guys smell
Fighting
blood
crime.
from miles away?
Yeah, they can do a bit like that. They are a bit like that. They kind of know they're a bit like that's one of the things. Like when they attack in massive force, and they often attack like a weak part. So they kind of sense weakness,
yeah.
And they'll
Okay.
and if they don't immediately overwhelm the area with outstanding force, they'll retreat, come back, and just ram it again, fucking hit it again, and they just keep doing that until they basically just totally destroy something with overwhelming force, rip everything to pieces. They've got these crazy chain swords that are like on the inside of their hand, so they could be like put their hand on you and like chainsaw it up.
Oh, cool.
But also with chain swords on the outside of their hand. They're just all fucking like chain fisted up. They got chain fists everywhere. It's very with teeth on, so very kind of on the nose for that. And again, a bit like some of the other chapters we've talked about, they're not good at like having worlds, and like it's not cool to live around a world of space sharks, really. Unlike the street sharks, again, they've changed it up there because they do this thing called the red tide, where they basically come into a world. They grab a bunch of serfs. They just grab a bunch of everything that's there. They're just like they do this on Imperial worlds as well. Whenever there's like something that if they're fighting a big, got to fight a bunch of Tyranids or something, they'll just run in and they can do this great red tide where they just grab a bunch of people and kidnap them and make them work for them. They also do something known as a grey tide, where they trade with Mechanicus guys, because the Mechanicus guy love the space sharks because they've always got a bunch of old shit. And so they're always getting together and doing some trades. So grey tides are dealing with the Mechanicus, and red tides are kidnap. In the Black Library short story Silent Hunters, the space shark capture a Dark Elder guy. And after a bit of torture, they leave him in a room because they kind of realize after a bit they're tweaking this guy's nipples, they're tasering his balls, whatever. And this guy's like, he's rock hard the whole time. And they're like, we know what's going on here.
Yeah.
We know what's going on here. So they just basically like chuck him in a room and just leave him with nothing but a bucket. And he just sits there in his own piss and shit for like, a week or whatever. And he starts like convincing himself that he's going to like win them over because he's so proud and shit. And they keep just coming in and like hosing him down or whatever. And basically after like a couple of months of this, and he's almost broken inside, they come in and they pick him up and they start to pull him away. And he's like, oh, this is going to be great. I can win them over with my cool, like my sexy Eldar ways or something. And they go and they take him to this room and they strap him into a chair and they leave him in front of this big window, which slowly opens up. And he's just there staring into the void, like the nothingness. There's not even stars or anything because these guys live so far out of the universe, so far away from the next seeable planet or whatever, that they're just looking into the void. That's the other thing. A bunch of their stuff is called void. There's a bunch of their psychic powers are called void stuff and things. So they leave this guy, this Dark Eldar here, looking at this void. The story ends with him starting to chuckle. And chuckling away before he ends up crying and crying.
They broke him.
That's very shark-like
broke
behavior. Sharky and George have done that on a couple of episodes I've watched.
I think so, yes. That's probably the likeness there. That's probably where the story comes from, to be honest. So a bunch of their stuff has some cool names because they're like random cool shark men. One of their positions, rather than a captain or whatever, is called the Forgotten One. I think their psychers are called Pale Nomads. There's Harvester Primes and Reaper Primes. They've all got like cool sharky names.
Is all of this like, is this one of those chapters that's basically fleshed out entirely by fanfic?
I think it
is. Is any of this like canon GW?
Well, the stuff about them breaking the Eldar is from a short story.
Okay.
And the stuff about them having weird, so that's got the stuff about them having weird skin and things and being massive.
Because the void, the living in the void thing, it got good potential, like the Silent King ran off into the void, he saw the Tyranids, he shat his pants, he came home, like what are these guys seeing? Like the next big thing. What are the Tyranids? If the Tyranids are running from something, then maybe these are the first people that are going to encounter it. Like they're out there. I know there's, you could say these are the top of the galaxy. The Tyranids are at the bottom, but the void's the void. Who knows what's coming from another galaxy?
Well, that's it. Cool. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and who knows what they've been, just defending us from, who can say? They're too stoic to say, and wouldn't they be able to contact you even if they did? Maybe they've been sending like an SOS signal in fucking Morse code or some shit that no one can understand because they've got weird shark disease that makes them really formal. I love the fact that
they like to jizz on each other's eggs.
Yeah.
I think they love to. Yeah, that's how they reproduce for sure. They jizz on each other.
I don't even know if that's not how sharks reproduce, is it? They have like live birth. Do they? No, they don't. I don't know. Fuck it.
I don't know. I'd say I think for the sake of law, they jizz on each other's eggs. Yeah, I think that's canon now. Put it in the books.
Warhammer community years ago posted this excellent guy's Carcharodons called Sani Ndiaye, which I've butchered probably. But if you search space sharks and Warhammer community, this guy's fully converted like Horus Heresy base army is absolutely beautiful. And he's gone with like, I wouldn't want to guess the culture, but a kind of Polynesian feel to what's going on. Really cool tribal markings.
They're full on into that. They've all the puka shell necklaces and like tribal tattoos and shark's teeth and shit. They're full on into kind of looking like you say, like half Polynesian and half like a fucking Mambo surf shop style.
They've definitely had segments in White Dwarfs before, like they've
little short stories at the back,
or like Codex Astarte bit in White Dwarf, and like
they've got an OG model, one of those like like you were showing us for the Flesh Tearers. They've got like an OG image like that, but I think that was also I think it was also black. Now I come to think of it, I
was gonna say I think that's sort of what got picked up by the community, and then people sort of ran with it. No, there was like a Rogue Trader era sketch of like a Space Marine, like your Flesh Tearers one. There was
yeah. Oh, that's it, and that's their camo version. Which they've got a camo version of their armor.
It's like a tiger shark.
It's like literally something. It's literally something like Ali G would wear as like a tracksuit.
It's wild. I'm gonna paint one of those. That's the craziest color scheme I've seen for 40k.
Yeah,
that's incredible. The normal color scheme's white, and then it looks like
it looks
like a slime mold. Like, oh man.
Yeah, I think their normal one is grey. I think they're like, again, like proper sharky. They've got like shark grey.
It's mad that these like chapters, all three of us have talked about, are so conceptually early within the lore and then lost and then built upon and then gone back. This is why people care about the lore and the things we were talking about, why it's important. Like the space sharks being a big thing now comes from like a single drawing in Rogue Trader like 30 years ago that's been built on, and then the Flesh Tearers comes back, and they're called Flesh Tearers, but I'm sure Rogue Trader didn't have a guy called Nasir Amit who like got the nomenclature Flesh Tearer. Like that's been written back in to like make it make sense from something that was so early. I think it's cool. It's why 40k is good. Don't water it down with unthought through changes. We want camouflage space sharks. That's what we want. Bring them now.
Oh yeah, hi, welcome back to Shoreditch Games Workshop. Oh, what's that? Oh yeah, that's just my buddy, Big Slammoo, blasting it on the sax in the back there, next to the Gene Slammer. Yeah, that's right, yeah, we've got a Gene Slammer, got one sent through from GW last week, yeah. Yeah, sure, I've heard of the Large Blast podcast, but to be honest with you, I only listen to them on records, because it's the only way the jokes sound funny.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this last part of the show, the Lords of Law, where I pit Matt and Welshie against each other to find out who is the Lord of Law. And today I've been reading the newspapers, and there's been some headlines in these newspapers, and I want you to guess what the headline is equated to. Cool. So you guys are from Brighton. You've seen the Argos, the legendary headlines of the Argos. So in a similar vein. Man suspected on arson attack of library for the visually impaired.
Burning of Prospero.
Burning of Prospero. Welshie, point for you.
Yeah.
That was an excellent question.
Yeah, that was good.
Oh.
Well, don't worry, because they only get worse from there. So here we go. Have secret kink parties gone too far?
Is that where when they're playing on the flesh stage? Is this flesh stage Fulgrim Apotheosis?
You know, that's what I initially tried to do the question as, but then I changed it. So it is kind of, that was initially in that. So you know what, Welsh, I'm going to give you a point. Fuck it. I fucked up the question. I lose a point.
Yes.
Okay. This is one for the OG Simpsons fan. Old man yells at cloud.
Is it Rogel? Is it Gilliman meeting the Emperor?
No.
It's gonna be someone getting pissed off about something, just moaning about it. Surely.
What's your guess, Welsh? I'm going to have to push you for time.
I don't know.
No.
Mortarion not wanting to join chaos, but falling into it anyway.
My actual answer was the Emperor fighting chaos in the warp.
Yeah.
Hero flight marshal averts tragedy.
Flight of the Eisenstein.
Flight of the Eisenstein, man. Boom.
I thought that was too clear cut with the word in it, you know?
Yeah, that is true. Suicide by cop for troubled royal.
Can you give us a clue? Or if
He's
you
a
don't watch-
Primarch. He's a Primarch.
Horus being killed by the Emperor.
No.
I don't know. I got nothing.
Oh, well, you like this guy. He's one of your guys. Like, you recommended the stuff. How I know about this is something that you recommended to me.
Oh, hang on. Okay, but cop is assassin, then it'll be Kurz. He just waits for the assassin to turn up and kill him.
That's right. Well,
Yeah.
point. So this one's from a Daily Mail article that I read, and it says illegal aliens responsible for loss of jobs (brackets) and planet.
Gene Stealer cults. Hey, pick a planet.
Matt, what do you think?
Say again.
Illegal aliens responsible for loss of jobs (brackets) and planet.
I don't think I can add anything more than
Gene Stealer cults.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll give you both a point. Well, I'll take away a point from both of you. It doesn't matter when you both get a point. I was going to do Gene Stealer. That was Gene Stealer cult doing something.
I was just trying to think of
just general Gene Stealer cult. So yeah, they get a bit more general. Sometimes as the quiz goes on. Amputee war hero found dead in hotel scandal.
Yarrick is dead.
Yarrick is dead, man.
He might not be though.
Yeah.
In the rumors.
Well,
oh boy.
Pioneering journalist reveals shit-eating space marine secret.
We spoke about this really not that long ago, I'm sure.
Shit-eating space marines. Is it? I mean, I was thinking Euphrates Keeler is the biggest journalist, but the Herald of Nurgle.
Herald of Nurgle. Matt, what do you reckon?
We mentioned it not that long ago. I'm sure there's an example of space marines eating shit to like get information or something, but I can't add anything more than that.
You know what, Matt? I'm going to give you a point for that because you're right. It was the Space Marine novel from whatever his name is.
The episode where you just kept reading from that.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, yeah, so it was a recent episode.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the last question, which, as we know, is all worth 10,000 billion points. Okay, so new space-age toilet saves mankind.
Golden Throne.
Golden Throne.
Golden Throne, man. Slide it in there. 10,000 million points. So that's been it. That's been today's Large Blast podcast. We hope you had a good time. Say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.